Hello, I'm here again in our series about Syria. Today is the 17th of December, and this is our part 5, or episode 5, if you will, in what would become the online university on Syria. And as you remember, and as you are aware, those who follow me, and the numbers are increasing by the day, I should say, and I'm very gratified about that. So we talked yesterday about the Syrian-Iranian alliance, and I tried to explain the main reasons for this alliance, the religious reason, Alawis and Shiites, or Shiites and Alawis, and some strategic and regional interest. And obviously, as it is in every other episode that we have, there's so much more to be talked about what we say here, because we can't really cover everything in such a short period of time. So the real request that I have from my viewers and listeners is to send me questions, if you will, or make comments. And by the way, we are putting all this on my Facebook page, but also on YouTube. So there are all kinds of ways in which one can follow this and spread it and distribute it to other people that might be interested. And I'm sure that there are those who are interested, judging by the comments I get. So let me continue with the Iranian situation. Yesterday I said that while one can argue that by the very nature of the Islamic Republic of Iran, they had to spread Shiism in the Middle East as their mission, and this is the reason for the creation of the Shi'i Crescent, I argued that the way they did it, how much they invested in it, the consistency with which they worked on it, the diligence in which they worked on it, all had to do with one main central focal point. And this is the Iranian plans to destroy the state of Israel. Now, many people don't like even words like Iran wants to destroy Israel, or God forbid, any other country wants to destroy any other country. But we in the West have to realize that what people say in the Middle East may sometimes be for propaganda purposes. Another time may be for domestic reasons, consumption. But in most cases, whether it is for this reason or that reason, they really mean what they say. And the Iranian investment was so huge. So look at Syria. And why did they invest so much in Syria and in Lebanon? Remember, after the American invasion to Iraq in 2003, one of the unintended consequences of what happened was that Iran became the most powerful force in Iraqi politics, because of the fact that there were democratic elections, and thanks God for that, for the first time in Iraq's history, and the Shia majority finally exercised their political power. And the Shias of Iraq are not the Shias of Iran. There are all kinds of differences here that, again, we can't get into it. But they're very much influenced by Iran, and Iran has become a potent force, not the most dominant all the time, not the only force, but a very strong force in Iraqi politics. So that gave them important position, connecting them via Iraq through the ground to Syria and Lebanon, which from their perspective were the most significant elements in the creation of the Shi'i Crescent, or if you will, the encircling of Israel with pro-Iranian Shi'i-dominated powers. And Syria and Lebanon became the main targets, already before, but definitely afterwards, to the Iranian influence. And the Iranians invested so much in Syria, they also sent even citizens. There are rumors that up to 700,000 or 800,000 Iranians settled in Syria and got Syrian citizenship. I can assure you that the current rulers in Damascus, or those that will come afterwards, the Sunni rulers of Syria, will not tolerate the situation for too long, and that's something else. They turned Syria into the area from which the arms were smuggled to Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Kalamun area, the mountains on the border between Syria and Lebanon. We knew it before, we know it now, that underground tunnels that were used to smuggle the long-range, so-called precise ballistic missiles of Hezbollah, the ones that were supposed to threaten Israel. And for a while, they did frighten at least some Israelis, to the point where Israel used this idea of Hezbollah having these formidable missiles as the reason why, for years, Israel did nothing to stop this situation in Lebanon itself. But at some point in time, the Israelis decided that they cannot tolerate it anymore. So as of 2012, 2013, they started what they called the low-intensity war against Syria in order to stop the smugglings from Syria to Lebanon. But they never did anything in Lebanon itself. We shall detail more about Israel, perhaps in the very end today, but also in the episode or in the part of it that we shall monitor, that we shall talk about tomorrow in this series. So Syria became basically the place where the Iranians invested so much, on top of what they already did in Iraq, but even more so in Lebanon. And they sent thousands of people to support Assad in the civil war, not just Iranian Shiites, but also from Afghanistan and other Shia communities. They invested a lot of money that they did not have, because their economic situation has always been very dire, very bad. And the estimates of how much money they invested in Syria are in the tens of billions of dollars that they are not going to get back. So I can go on and on like this. There's no question that the downfall of the Assad regime is a terrible disaster for the Iranian plans to create this crescent around Israel. Add up to this what happened to Hamas in Gaza and to Hezbollah in Lebanon. Finally, Israel decided, after 11 months of ongoing aggression by Hezbollah against Israel in the north, to take action. And again, we'll talk more about that separately, but we know the result of it. Hezbollah was defeated in Lebanon. It was defeated in Lebanon. The results this time are nothing like they used to be after the war of 2006, when at that time also Hezbollah was defeated. And the then leader, the no more leader of Hezbollah, Hassan Nasrallah, we know what happened to him now, but at that time, he said if he knew what would happen in the war, he would not have started in 2006. Despite that, because of all kinds of reasons, there was this belief that Israel did not really win this war in 2006. And nobody talks about that anymore now. And now, with the collapse of the Assad regime in Syria, the Iranian defeat is resounding. Now, let me tell you something. There were elements in Syria, in the regime, supporting of Bashar Assad, that did not like the intensity of the Iranian involvement in Syria. How did they express their opposition to Iran? Use your creative imagination. There are so many reports now, there have been so many reports before about all kinds of moves in Syria itself, even among the close circle around Assad, of those who were ready to express their opposition to the Iranian, what they called invasion to Syria, even by somehow supporting the Israeli military effort, what they call the low-intensity war in Syria. The Israeli bombardments of all those convoys of arms coming from Iran via Iraq and Syria to Lebanon. Yep, this is the Middle East. Do not be surprised. The problems about the Iranian presence in Syria tore apart even the Assad clan. We knew, and we know now that Maher Assad, the younger brother of the president, the hot-headed commander of the Armored Division number 4, which is used to be the core force of the ground army of Assad, he was in the pocket of the Iranians. And that's where he was, in the pocket of the Iranians. Whereas Bashar al-Assad may have had his own reservations. In the background of all that were the Russians, who did not like the Iranian involvement in Syria because they saw it as a competition with their interest there and their attempt to be the dominant force in Syria. And while the Iranians did what they did in Syria in order to create this circle around Israel, the Russians for a few years had a cooperation on the ground with the Israelis in terms of making sure that the Israeli activities in Syria can continue, but they will always be targeted at the Iranians, whereas the Russians, wherever they were in Syria, whether in Tartus or anywhere else, they were out of it. And they never intervened, never interfered, never disturbed Israeli activities. So they also were aware of what was happening. So when we connect it all now to the involvement of Turkey in Syria, let me repeat again what I said already before about Turkey. The Syrians will not accept an actual virtual Turkish occupation of Syria by Erdogan. They will not accept it. The Turks will have problems there. We hear reports about concentration of their troops threatening the Kurdish areas of northeast Syria. But that's just the beginning. If indeed they do something there, we'll see what the Americans will do in that case. But coming back to the bigger picture here, the Syrians will not allow domination by Turkey after we know that they didn't like the domination by Iran. And clearly, it will also happen when the regime there will be Sunni and the Turks are Sunnis. But this is an historic rivalry, and we talked more about Turkey, Syria in the past, in previous episodes. But in the background of all that, there is, of course, Israel. Iran wanted to use Syria against Israel. And it failed. So we'll talk more about the Israeli connection as of tomorrow. But right now I can say the following. What will be or what can be the Iranian conclusion from all that? Will they have what you would call a realistic assessment of cost-benefit? Will they emphasize still the ideology, the commitment to destroy Israel? Or will they realize that the current situation is such that they're now under siege, or they could be under siege, that they are in a weak moment, and therefore they have to be careful? Now, that could still lead them to two options that may seem mutually exclusive, but they are not really. One of them would be, we are turning our back to Syria and Lebanon, or at least minimizing as much as we can, under circumstances, our involvement there. But then we feel that we are under siege. Therefore, our only option to deal with what could be a danger to us is to intensify and speed up the nuclear program. That is a possibility. And why would they do it? They can do it exactly because by speeding it up and intensifying it, they might put pressure on the new actor around, Donald Trump, the US, as of the 20th of January. Trump wants to talk to the Iranians. And by intensifying their nuclear program as a result of what happened in Syria, they might create the conditions that will enable a dialogue. Yes, they will have to make concessions, but the dialogue could still be helpful to them. They might feel that they are under attack now. So we shall see how it all develops. And as I promised you yesterday, in the end of this series, I'm going to make more concrete predictions. So I will come to that issue as well. Tomorrow we'll talk about Syria and Israel. Thank you, and see you tomorrow. Goodbye.